And we're now live.
Well, good morning, folks. I'd like to welcome members of the committee and members of staff, and those of you watching at home. This is your Social Services Committee meeting for Wednesday, November the 4th. Does the clerk have the roll call?
I sure do.
Okay. Let me remind you of some of the COVID rules and procedures. First of all, let's make sure that our microphones are all muted when we're not speaking. Make sure you keep your video on so that we can maintain quorum. Should we lose quorum, we'll have about 15 minutes to regain it. Otherwise, the meeting stands adjourned. I think everybody is participating by video this morning, so if you could please use the raise hand button on your monitor. If anybody joins by telephone, just shout out your desire to speak. Let's see, I think I've pretty much covered all that stuff. We'll move now to declarations. Does anyone have a pecuniary interest to declare this morning? I don't see any. We do have one presentation today. Before we embark on that, I'll remind especially members of County Council that we're operating under City of Brantford rules and procedures. So the presentation has 10 minutes to present, which includes questions if there's time remaining. However, the presenter will be remaining during the debate period to answer any additional questions that members of the committee may have. So could I get a mover and seconder for all the items of business today, please? I see Councillor Sless and I see Councillor Laferriere. Thank you very much. In addition to item 4.1, which is the presentation item, are there any other items that you'd like to separate for discussion and debate? In addition to 4.1. Going once? Okay, I'm going to call the vote then on the remainder of the balance, rather, of our items for business today. Those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Emma, we're going to do this with show of hands, or are we going to? We're not set up for voting on e-scribe with the county, are we?
No, that's correct. We just did it by show of hands.
Okay, Councillor Toski, are you still voting?
I believe it looks like she's
Toski,
frozen
well, hopefully
again.
she'll make it back. Yeah, she's frozen.
She fell asleep.
We'll just count her as voting in favor of everything, because she will have her hand up, I think, until she comes back. So now we're going to move on. Pardon?
I said, hopefully she finds her finger. It's missing in the picture there.
Yeah, it's the ring finger, I think, which is one of the most important of the five. Okay, so now we're going to move to the presentation. Could I ask staff to pop up here on the screen and proceed? Remembering you have precisely 10 minutes and no more and no less. Thank you.
Okay, yes, good morning. It's Susan Evenden, Director of Social Assistance and Homelessness, and I am joined today by Hannah Ittner, who is our project manager for the Homelessness Individuals and Families Information System, or HIFIS. I'm going to hand it over to Hannah in just a moment, but this is really a good news story for us. The HIFIS system is web-based. It's incredibly robust. Some of you might know that it's a proven tool. A lot of communities across Canada are already using it, but what the impediment was for us was really the dedicated staffing that we needed to really define the data points that we need to collect, onboard our community agencies, and maintain the system. And thanks to federal Reaching Home community funding, we're very fortunate to have Hannah project managing the implementation of this system, and the implementation has progressed quite a bit despite COVID since the last time we spoke about it. So we're very pleased to come before you today and update you on that. Without a comprehensive data system, we really have been challenged to provide the reliable information that we know that you as elected officials really want on the homelessness file. And this is really going to help us track some important metrics. So I will hand things over to Hannah to walk you through today's presentation.
Thank you, Sue. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hannah Ittner, and I'm the Homelessness and Housing Stability System Project Manager. Today, I am providing to you an update on the implementation of the Homeless Individuals and Families Information System, also known as HIFIS. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I'm excited to share the progress of the project. For today's presentation, I will review the purpose of the project, provide some background on HIFIS, share updates on the status of implementation and the anticipated outcomes of the project. Proceed to the next slide, please. The Brantford Brant Housing Stability Plan for the period of 2014 to 2024 identified the need to enhance housing first case management to clients experiencing homelessness and to improve communication between service providers for a more coordinated approach to care. To address these needs, it was crucial for the City of Brantford to address data collection and sharing barriers. These barriers have limited the ability of service providers to share the challenges faced by individuals and to maintain a consistent approach to case management. Next slide. Early 2019, the City of Brantford signed a contract with the federal government to become part of the Reaching Home program, as it would help in addressing local needs. Reaching Home aims to prevent and reduce homelessness by providing direct support and funding to communities across Canada. Under Reaching Home, communities are fully funded to implement a coordinated access system. The purpose of a coordinated access system is to streamline the process for individuals experiencing homelessness to access the services they need to obtain and retain housing. There are a number of components to an effective coordinated access system. Clear access points of entry into the homelessness system of care. An example of this would be our local emergency shelters. Standardized protocols so that the client knows what to expect and to ensure that supports are consistent. A common approach to assessment, such as the VI SPDAT for prioritizing individuals for housing based on their level of need. Supportive resources made available to individuals and to service providers, and the implementation of a centralized database, also known as HIFIS. Next slide. Okay. In collaboration with community partners, the City of Brantford is implementing a coordinated access system through a phased approach. The first phase focused on the inflow of individuals into emergency shelters within the Brantford Brant homelessness system of care. The second phase focuses on case planning with clients and developing a housing first case management approach. The final phase focuses on homelessness prevention services. At this time, the City of Brantford has successfully launched HIFIS with 4 agencies and a total of 57 users and approximately 150 clients with profiles on the database. Policies and procedures relating to the use of HIFIS have been finalized in the areas of data sharing, privacy, user management, and client admissions. The City has also begun developing policies and procedures for Phase 2. With continued engagement with emergency shelters and housing support agencies, we've begun to finalize our case planning approach. This approach intends to be future-oriented as it emphasizes planning and action in response to a client's self-determined goals and aspirations. We have also begun to engage with service providers that often serve individuals that are experiencing homelessness. This includes the Aboriginal Health Centre, Grand River Community Health Centre, and St. Leonard's. We continue to expand our reach and in hopes to develop a strong network of services that can collaborate on care. Next slide. The implementation of HIFIS within a coordinated access system will result in the following outcomes: consistent data collection, collaborative case planning, and enhanced reporting. In the upcoming slides, I will outline each of these outcomes in greater detail. Next slide. Throughout the implementation of HIFIS thus far, a core theme has been consistency. This includes consistent definitions when discussing client experiences and consistent processes for data collection. As a result of this approach, we are able to eliminate the need for clients to repeat their stories, improve data quality, and help service providers to enhance the delivery of care. Each shelter within our coordinated access system is expected to collect or review the following information upon client entry into their facility: demographic details, housing history, financial information, and the reasons as to why a client is accessing homelessness services. During the client's stay, staff collect admission details, including but not limited to referral information and discharge information when a client leaves the facility. Through consistent data collection practices, data quality improves. Client information becomes increasingly reliable and accessible through the collaborative efforts of multiple service providers. Data is delivered in real time. Case planning activities will be based on the most current information available, and reporting on homelessness within our community becomes more accurate. Case planning in our coordinated access system is intended to facilitate a client's progress towards greater independence, housing stability, and transition to permanent housing. By using HIFIS to document and share client progress with multiple service providers, clients will experience a superior continuity of care with improved housing outcomes. On HIFIS, staff will be able to document the services that they deliver to progress a client's case plan and complete VI SPDAT assessments that will add the client to the by name list. The by name list comprises of individuals and families who are actively experiencing homelessness and have provided consent for their information to be shared. The purpose of this list is to support clients to access appropriate services through referrals or, if eligible, prioritization for specific housing resources. This list can be extracted from HIFIS and will be reviewed by a working group that aims to collaboratively address barriers that may prevent a prioritized client from retaining their housing match. It has been a significant challenge within Brantford Brant to prioritize clients for housing and to collaborate on solutions that would help clients to retain their housing match. With HIFIS, service providers will have a tool to identify the barriers that clients face and a means to coordinate care for the benefit of clients. Next slide, please. HIFIS has tremendous reporting abilities that will lead to a greater understanding of the portrait of homelessness within our community and will support evidence-based program improvements. Without a centralized database to share data in real time, client and service-related information was delayed and caused inaccuracies. With HIFIS reporting, the BHSC will be able to better understand the factors that can lead to individuals experiencing homelessness and strengthen shelter diversion and prevention practices. Reports available in HIFIS include the number of bed nights occupied on a monthly basis, daily shelter occupancy rates, and shelter demographics. Once again, next slide. Once again, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share the tremendous progress that has been made with this project. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Members of the committee, it's your turn. I don't see, there we go. Councillor Weaver, you're first in the queue. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you stated that this system is going to be web-based. So is the outreach team going to have access to this system as well?
So that would be the hope, that we would be able to have the access, or the outreach team being able to include that data onto HIFIS. I'll say at this time, we have been prioritizing the emergency shelters, but I can see that as a future addition to the team, because of course they collect such fulsome and important information that helps to identify the challenges that we're facing.
And so you had mentioned that many municipalities across Canada are using this system. So will this system allow us to, I'm sensitive to the words track, but follow along as somebody that's going through their journey of homelessness and where they're going? So whether they were at Hamilton and then on this date they showed up in Brantford. And I think having that type of data, I think, might show us why people are coming here or why people are leaving. And just, I think the more data we have, the better decisions we can make.
Right. So in terms of how the HIFIS database works is it's hosted by each municipality. So unfortunately, there isn't that interconnectivity between each municipality. But I think you bring up a very important point of being able to, if we identify that a client is from a different municipality, perhaps it's a matter of, in terms of enhancing the way that we coordinate our care, making those important connections and saying, you know, we have a client that came in, they identified they're from your community. Is there any way that we can make this connection and offer additional support? But no, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, I think also having the ability to maybe see a history of somebody,
Right.
and the history that the municipality has had dealing with that particular person. I think if we were to have that information, I think that would, again, assist us help those individuals better. So this is a good report. Thank you very much for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Wall, you're next in the queue. Go ahead, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Chair McCreary. Is it just for questions, or could I potentially ask a question and then seek an amendment?
No, Councillor, the presentation is over, so your 4 minutes is to use as you see fit.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hannah, for the presentation. I have a question about the recommendation and specifically Clause B. It states that staff would be directed to provide an annual report to the Social Services Committee. And I'm wondering if there would be added value in, on top of the annual report, quarterly updates, at least for the first year. I'm wondering if you would see the value in that.
I don't know if Anthony or Sue want to speak to this, but I mean, absolutely, if there's an opportunity to be able to share the information that's being collected and being able to contribute to that portrait, I think that would be tremendous. But I don't know if Sue or Anthony want to speak to a quarterly update.
Yes, through the chair, we're very agreeable to providing more regular updates. The only caveat I would offer is, as you saw, we're ramping up right now. We, don't have a critical mass necessarily of users and data at this point, and so the question would be commencing those quarterly reports once we feel that we have, a robust enough and accurate enough data. So we're still in the implementation phase, but we certainly will bring reports at whatever interval this committee would request them.
Definitely. And just so I'm not saying the words here, I'm just more thinking of an update, not a full report. I just think that at least for the first year that we're doing this, I think having the opportunity for us to be able to see where this is headed. So then, yeah, I would, seeking a seconder, move to amend Clause B, that on top of the annual report that this committee is provided with a quarterly update.
Councillor Sless is the seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Sless.
Councillor Wall, do you wish to speak further to your amendment, Councillor Wall?
I think this is incredible. I think this is this is going to give us the ability to do what we've been talking about doing since I joined this committee and long before, I was ever on this committee. And I think that everybody here wants to have an opportunity to be able to provide I said it last night at council, the best deliverables possible to the people that we represent. And I feel like by, having this yearly report, it'll generate incredible data, but specific to my amendment, the quarterly updates will give us the ability to make sure that this is going exactly the way that we want. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Is there any debate or question on the amendment that's before us on the floor? It's been duly seconded. Seeing none, we'll go to the vote by show of hands. Those in favor of the amendment. And that looks to be unanimous. Thank you very much. Now we're back to debate on the resolution before us as amended. Councillor Miller, would you like to go ahead, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. Hannah, you said during your presentation, the clients sign a consent form to share the information with various providers. You said in the report there's 4 service providers using, I want to say HIFIS, 57 users adding real-time data. How do you safeguard the confidentiality of the clients?
Sorry?
Because there's some, how do you safeguard the confidentiality of the clients? Because I was looking, there's some what I would consider to be some pretty sensitive information in there. For example, some of their medical history and things like that. So how do you prevent that from being, or how do you safeguard the confidentiality of that?
Of course. So there's a few different agreements that are in place. And I'll just kind of go through like different aspects of how we protect that information. So first and foremost, the database is hosted by the city. So in terms of protecting the database itself, our IT department is responsible for making sure that that's secure. Each agency also signs a data sharing agreement, which stipulates the expectations of each agency to protect the client's information. Third aspect is that each user signs a user agreement for the appropriate use of the database. As well, I will be running regular audit reports that will actually track the use of our users in terms of accessing client profiles that they otherwise should not be accessing if they're not providing service, and just trying to monitor that usage of HIFIS. But in terms of just protecting client information, it's kind of a joint responsibility to make sure that we're all using the database appropriately and accessing client information only when we need it. And in terms of health information, just because you had mentioned it just then, I've made it clear that we aren't including specific diagnosis on the database. So we try to keep it as information that's related to on an as needed basis, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I understand, like I say, there's a balance there, but
yeah,
just looking at it, it does seem that there's a lot of people with access to this database, and I know if I was a client, I certainly wouldn't feel comfortable. But thank you for the answer.
No problem. And we do include on the consent, we do stipulate the information that is being collected, and we do indicate to the client the different agencies that are using the database. So we also ensure that there is informed consent on the client side.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Van Tilburg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Just so it's clear, you have 150 clients registered, and 57,
approximately.
and 57 are actively using the system now. Is that
yes?
Okay. And when it says client self-determined goals, is that done through the system or is that done through interaction with the service providers?
That's an excellent question. So we're actually in the midst of finalizing the planning for that piece. And so what we've been working on with our service providers is we actually have a series of goals that like goal areas that the service providers in
We appear to be experiencing technical difficulties.
Waiting with anticipation.
Just a point of information, do we pause the time for the speaker at this time? Or for the questioner?
Oh, no. No, this is his time. He can continue to speak all he likes.
Well, very good. Just let her take away then. And I guess that depending on how things go, my other question would be regarding clients and their stories. If the clients input the stories into the system, because one might know through a journey that stories will change, that stories move along, and so if when I saw clients don't repeat stories for consistency, I thought, well, perhaps one service provider got the first part of the story and then it's never updated. But now you've got you might have a client saying, okay, I was at this point, but this is really where I'm at, or this is really how things went down. Because as people become more comfortable, they tell you more, and you get more, hopefully more factual information as they move along. So I don't know if you caught that or not.
I apologize. My internet booted me out right in the middle. But in terms of, and I think I captured at the end there, and I apologize for my internet working against me, evidently. But the idea is that upon admission, the client would also revisit those goals as well. And when they're working through those goals, there's that constant interaction to say, okay, these are the action items that we've done. What's the next step? Do you feel like you've achieved this goal? And we just want to make it as client-centered as possible. I hope that answered the latter part. I really apologize for.
The latter part is just basically a client with a story when they first come in. Is that registered through the system or through the service provider? And when it says that you don't want to see different, having to repeat the story, but the stories may change over time. So how is that inputted into the system? That's what I'd like.
Right. Okay. So in terms of not having to repeat their story, so in terms of their basic details and their demographic information, their housing history, it's more of every time they re-enter, it's updated. So recognizing that they don't have to, repeat their whole tale. It's a matter of, okay, this is where you were the last time we spoke. What's changed? And in terms of this case planning piece, I am configuring the system so that our goal setting form that we've created can actually be directly translated into the database. So every service provider can see that record and be able to update it with new information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Van Tilburg. Councillor Sluss, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. You indicated that we don't have a formal link to other communities that have a similar system. Do we have the legal ability to share the information we gather in our community with other communities? Can we legally do that? Or are there privacy issues that prohibit that?
I would suspect that there may be privacy concerns, but that's something that I would have to speak to my legal department about, or speak to the legal department about, because when they sign their consent form, they're really signing the consent for our community to share that information in and amongst those that have access to our database. So that's just something that I would have to take back and do some more research on.
Right. Well, it's just, to me, it's an opportunity to either confirm or dispel the people that have, I guess, the opinion that folks are coming into the city because we've made it too soft or too easy, or it's better equipped here than it is elsewhere. So we become a mecca, and to dispel that would be an opportunity to speak to other communities as people are arriving, to have that interaction with other communities, to see where are people coming from, if in fact they're even coming from.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a really important question. I even see this as a potential opportunity too, when a client comes into our community and we're identifying they're from out of town. Are there questions that we can ask the client to say, why did you choose us? Why did you choose to come here? And perhaps getting that feedback and information from the client directly as well might be an opportunity. But yeah, I do have a number of different contacts from different municipalities. So this is something that I think would be very interesting to see if we can pursue and have larger conversations.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor, thank you. Anyone else care to speak before we move along? Councillor Bell, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter. This looks like a very good system. I'm interested in whether it talks to other systems in the city as well, so that all the people that are involved in placing people within the homelessness sphere are able to access it.
So that would really be contingent on if they sign the data sharing agreement. So we are right now, we are focusing on the emergency shelters, and we do have some housing agencies such as Brantford Native Housing that we're seeking to, provide that access to. So the database itself, in terms of speaking to other databases, it doesn't necessarily do that, but that is something that I would be looking into, is just seeing what key agencies can kind of help with supporting clients obtain and retain housing.
Thank you. And a further question. I'm looking at, I think it's about the 7th slide you had, which it talks about client vitals. Is that actually, is that an accurate representation of the data you collect, or is this just an image? Because I think I can think of other data that you might collect that might be useful as you work with these individual clients in the system.
Okay, I'm just going to pull up the slide now. So the images that I included were snapshots from the database itself. So that client vitals page is really the basic information that we collect. But in the image, there's right to the left there's client information and client management. Under client information, that's where housing history, financial information, contributing factors as to why a client is experiencing homelessness is stored. So this main page is really just the basic details to be able to quickly identify, you know, if this is the correct profile for the client and properly reflects just their basic information.
Oh, thank you. I'm pleased to hear that. And in that client information, might there be information about specific medical conditions that need to be considered as we try to place these folks in our system?
So we did have some concern and consideration around including specific diagnosis in the database, because that actually goes into a different set of agreements. But if a client were to identify that they have a medical concern with the agency, the idea is we're trying to facilitate streamlined referral pathways. So for example, being able to, if a client identified that they had a medical concern, referring them to an agency like Grand River Community Health to receive primary care. And in terms of what would be entered into the database, it would be more so related to just that this provision of service would be helpful to the client. Just being respectful of their private information and their medical information.
Final question about data you might collect. Any connections to ODSP or Ontario Works, for example, on the financial side? Maybe you mentioned financial information earlier. Maybe you capture it there.
You're exactly right. So under financial information, the staff would be able to select that they receive income from OW or ODSP. And then conversely, if they were not receiving that type of financial support, they would be able to document that a referral to OW or ODSP is required.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Welcome, Mayor Davis. We're on item 4.1. Thank you for cutting your previous meeting short to join us this morning. Are there any other comments on 4.1 as amended? Mayor Bailey, go ahead, please.
No, I was just wondering that whether there was an opportunity to give these clients some sort of a takeaway, whether it be a laminated souped down version of all their information that just gives them something. Sometimes these clients have a hard time coming up with ID. And I was just wondering if we could soup something down so it just sort of ended up being their name and some sort of a crest or a logo saying that they are in some system, so that they don't, it would be an introduction if they ever needed to come back or if they were going to some other community to show that they had been part of something. I mean, I'm not expecting you to reveal anything about anyone, but these kinds of clients sometimes do have a hard time with ownership of keeping track of things. And I just wondered whether you could do some sort of a laminated takeaway from this program.
So in terms of how HIFIS would, I think that's a great idea. So I'll just start with that. So every HIFIS profile has an associated file number. So that could even be used as some type of identification. We're also able to create custom reports. So I do really, I like the idea of being able to provide them with something to say their information is validated on this database. And so that's something that I would have to look into, but I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote on this item as amended. Those in favor? Any opposed? We are carried. Okay, that's it for the business at hand today. We don't have a resolution in front of us. Would anybody have a notice of motion to give this morning? Okay. How about a question? Who's got a question? No one has a. Councillor Bell, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Some while ago, we talked about the costs of funerals for that the county or the city might pay for. And I think there was an action taken by staff to go back to service providers. Do we have an update on when we might get a report back?
Yes, through the chair. We are in the very final stages of awarding that contract. And so we're hopeful to be able to bring an update to this committee for December, January at the latest.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Then I'll thank everybody for their participation this morning, and Hannah especially for the great presentation. We are now adjourned, folks. Have a good day.
Good day.
Is there another meeting after this meeting?